The story begins on a cold night in Prague, Czech Republic. British MI6 agent James Bond has tracked down Dryden, a high-ranking MI6 section chief who has been selling secrets to enemies. The setting is a dimly lit office, quiet except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Dryden enters, unaware that Bond is already waiting for him, seated in the shadows. Dryden smirks as he sees Bond acting unfazed. He places his briefcase down and adjusts his suit, his demeanor confident. "I knew someone would come," he says casually, "but I didn't expect you." His tone is patronizing, as if Bond is a rookie sent to do a professional's job. Bond remains silent, his icy blue eyes fixed on Dryden. Without hesitation, Dryden reaches into his desk drawer for a gun. Bond doesn't reply immediately. Instead, his mind flashes back to his first kill, a violent, messy fight in a dingy bathroom. His target, Fisher, fought desperately, smashing Bond into a mirror and flailing for a gun. Bond, though untested, was relentless. He slammed Fisher's head into a sink, grappling for control. After a fierce struggle, he finally held him under the water, watching as his body went limp. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. Back in the present, Dryden shakes his head. "Well, you needn't worry. The second is..." Before he can finish, Bond fires a silenced shot. Dryden collapses, his sentence unfinished. He is no longer just another agent. James Bond is now a fully licensed assassin. The scene shifts to the scorching heat of Madagascar, where Bond is on a covert mission to track a bomb maker named Malaka. The setting is a chaotic street market filled with locals moving about their day. Bond, dressed in a simple casual outfit, watches Malaka from a distance. Alongside him is another MI6 agent, Carter, who appears nervous, adjusting his earpiece repeatedly. Malaka, a wiry and athletic man, senses something is off. As he looks around, Carter makes a mistake. He touches his earpiece, drawing unwanted attention. Malaka's eyes lock onto them, and in a split second, he bolts. The chase is immediate and intense. Malaka is incredibly fast and agile, using parkour to scale fences and leap across rooftops. Bond, less graceful but equally determined, smashes through obstacles rather than avoiding them. The pursuit takes them through a bustling construction site, where workers shout in confusion as Bond and Malaka race past. Malaka ascends a towering crane, moving with ease along the narrow beams. Bond follows, his approach more aggressive. When Malaka makes a daring jump to another section, Bond doesn't hesitate. He lunges forward, barely catching the edge and pulling himself up. The chase descends to ground level, where Malaka attempts to lose Bond in an unfinished building. Bond spots a nearby bulldozer and takes control of it, using the massive machine to crash through walls and clear a path. As Malaka tries to escape into a security office, Bond finally corners him. A brutal fight breaks out. Malaka reaches for a gun, but Bond reacts first. In one swift motion, he disarms him and delivers a deadly shot. Malaka falls to the ground, lifeless. Bond kneels beside the body and retrieves a mobile phone. The screen displays a single word, ellipsis. This is his next lead. The guards immediately raise their weapons, shouting commands in a foreign language. Bond grabs Malaka's body and holds it up as a shield, attempting to buy time. The room is filled with tension. The guards order him to surrender, but Bond remains still, calculating his next move. With quick reflexes, he hurls Malaka's body at the nearest guard and fires several shots, taking down the lights. The embassy descends into chaos as people scramble for cover. Bond uses the confusion to his advantage, weaving through the corridors and taking down guards one by one. As he nears the exit, he spots a gas canister. With a precise shot, he causes an explosion, sending a fiery blast through the building. The force knocks back his pursuers, allowing Bond to make his escape. Outside, he disappears into the crowded streets. Back at MI6, analysts examine the recovered phone. The word ellipsis leads them to a mysterious figure, a financier of global terrorism named Lashif. Far from the chaos of Madagascar, Lashif sits aboard a luxury yacht, his demeanor calm and calculated. He is a financial genius, trusted by dangerous clients to invest their money. He plays chess alone, moving pieces while discussing investments with a client via phone. Lashif is making bold bets against major airline stocks. His plan is clear. He is funding a massive terrorist attack that will cripple airline companies, allowing him to profit from the stock market collapse. His investors, mostly warlords and criminals, are unaware of the full details, trusting him to deliver results. However, his confidence masks a growing problem. British intelligence has begun to interfere with his operations. His funds are at risk, and failure is not an option. To recover his losses, he arranges a high-stakes poker game at Casino Royale in Montenegro. The game will be his chance to win back the millions he has lost. MI6 sees an opportunity. If Bond can enter the game and beat Lashif, he can ruin him financially, forcing him to seek MI6 protection in exchange for information. Before leaving for Montenegro, Bond is assigned a financial overseer, Vesper Lynd, a strikingly intelligent British Treasury agent. They first meet on a luxurious train, where Vesper walks into Bond's cabin with an air of authority. She is dressed elegantly, her confidence matching Bond's own. Their conversation is playful yet filled with sharp wit. Vesper sizes up Bond immediately, analyzing his background and ego with uncanny accuracy. Bond, amused but impressed, counters by analyzing her in return. Their verbal sparring reveals mutual respect, though both maintain their guarded exteriors. As the train glides through scenic landscapes, Vesper finally hands Bond a tailored tuxedo. She insists that appearance matters for the poker game. He must look the part of a sophisticated player. Bond, though initially dismissive, recognizes her point. By the time they arrive in Montenegro, an unspoken tension lingers between them. They have begun to understand each other, though neither is willing to admit it yet. But personal feelings must wait. Bond's focus is on the game. The mission at Casino Royale is about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Bond and Vesper arrive in Montenegro, where they are met by Renee Mathis, an MI6 contact who will assist them in navigating the world of high-stakes gambling. As they walk through the lavish surroundings of Casino Royale, Mathis explains that Lashif has organized this game as a desperate attempt to win back the money he lost when one of his investment schemes was foiled. Inside the casino, Bond is introduced to his competitors, wealthy financiers, arms dealers, and high-profile gamblers. Each player has bought in with a staggering sum of money, but the real battle is between Bond and Lashifra. The tension is evident the moment they sit at the table. Bond's piercing blue eyes meet Lashifra's cold, calculating gaze. Neither man flinches. The dealer shuffles the deck, and the game begins. Bond plays cautiously at first, observing his opponents, but he soon recognizes Lashif's strategy. He uses probability and intimidation to manipulate the game. Despite this, Bond remains composed, relying on his instincts and his ability to read people. Between hands, Bond notices that Vesper is uneasy. She watches the game closely, but her nerves betray her in small ways, tapping her foot, glancing at Bond when she thinks he's losing. Bond reassures her with a subtle nod. The first round ends with moderate losses and gains, but Bond knows the real battle is just beginning. Hours pass, and the poker game grows more intense. Bond carefully studies Lashif, noticing a slight tick in his left eye whenever he bluffs. Using this information, Bond begins to make strategic plays, gaining the upper hand. Sensing Bond's growing confidence, Lashif decides to play dirty. As Bond sips from his drink, he suddenly feels lightheaded. His vision blurs, his heartbeat races, and he struggles to focus. Realizing he has been poisoned, Bond excuses himself from the table and stumbles toward the casino's exterior. Out in the parking lot, Bond fights against the effects of the toxin. His training kicks in. He rushes to his Aston Martin and pulls out a medical kit. His fingers shake as he attaches a defibrillator pad to his chest. He barely manages to call MI6 for instructions. "I've been poisoned," he gasps, struggling to remain conscious. Back at MI6 headquarters, medical analysts scramble to help. They guide him through the antidote process, but just as he is about to administer the final shock to his heart, the defibrillator malfunctions. Bond's vision darkens. He is moments from death. Suddenly, Vesper appears. She slams the defibrillator into place and activates it, jolting Bond back to life. He gasps for air, his body drenched in sweat. Vesper watches him, her expression filled with concern and something else. Fear. Bond recovers quickly, straightens his tuxedo, and heads back inside. The game isn't over yet. Returning to the poker table, Bond finds Lashif still confident, unaware that Bond has survived his assassination attempt. The tension in the room thickens as the game reaches its final stage. The pot has grown to an unimaginable amount, $115 million, and only a few players remain. Bond maintains his composure even as Lashif tries to break his confidence. "You changed your shirt," Lashif taunts. Bond simply smirks. "I figured it was time for a fresh start." The final hand is dealt. Bond looks at his cards, a straight flush, the rarest and most powerful hand in poker. He remains expressionless, careful not to reveal his advantage. The betting war escalates, and Lashif, convinced he has the winning hand, goes all in. Bond calmly calls, placing his remaining chips in the center. The players reveal their cards one by one. Lashif smugly turns over his full house, certain of his victory. But then Bond reveals his straight flush. The room erupts in gasps. Bond has won. Lashif's confidence shatters. He grips the poker table, his knuckles turning white. Bond, ever the gentleman, collects his winnings with a smirk. He has bankrupted Lashif, stripping him of his financial power. But Lashif is not a man who accepts defeat easily. Later that night, Bond and Vesper leave the casino, believing they are safe. But as they drive through the winding roads of Montenegro, a sudden obstacle forces Bond to swerve. The car crashes violently, flipping multiple times before landing upside down. Before Bond can react, armed men pull him from the wreckage. Vesper is dragged away, screaming. Bond tries to fight back, but a blunt force to the head knocks him unconscious. When he wakes up, he is stripped naked, tied to a chair in a dimly lit basement. Lashif stands before him, his eyes burning with rage. "You changed the game, Mr. Bond," he sneers. brandishing a thick knotted rope. The torture begins. Lashif swings the rope, striking Bond repeatedly. The pain is excruciating, but Bond refuses to break. Even as Lashif demands the location of the money, Bond laughs through the agony. "I've got an itch," he taunts, infuriating his captor. Just as it seems Bond will not survive, salvation arrives unexpectedly. The door bursts open, and Lashif's expression shifts from anger to fear. A mysterious figure enters, a man associated with Lashif's dangerous clients. Without hesitation, he executes Lashif with a silenced gun. Bond, still tied to the chair, watches in disbelief as Lashif's body crumples to the floor. The nightmare is over, but the true danger is yet to come. Bond recovers under Vesper's care, believing their ordeal is behind them. They retreat to Venice, where they share moments of intimacy and vulnerability. Bond, for the first time, allows himself to love. He even plans to leave MI6 for a life with Vesper. But his happiness is short-lived. He receives a cryptic message from MI6. The money never arrived. Realizing Vesper has betrayed him, Bond rushes through the canals of Venice, following her as she meets with shady individuals. As Bond approaches, gunfire erupts. The building collapses into the water, and Vesper, trapped inside a sinking elevator, looks at Bond with sorrow. Despite her betrayal, Bond fights to save her. He smashes the glass, reaching for her hand, but Vesper, knowing she cannot escape her fate, lets go. She drowns before his eyes. Bond drags her lifeless body to the surface, his face unreadable. The woman he loved is gone, but in her final act, Vesper left him a clue, a name connected to the criminal organization behind everything. The final scene shows Bond tracking down a mysterious figure. As he steps into the light, he coldly introduces himself. "The name's Bond, James Bond."